You are not remembering that moment. Your brain is running a simulation of it. There is a difference. And that difference is why you can lie perfectly still in the dark, completely exhausted, and still end up back in a middle school cafeteria, or standing in front of a room where you said exactly the wrong thing, or in a conversation that ended badly years before you understood why. Neuroscientists don't call this remembering. They call it reconsolidation. And what they've found, what makes this genuinely unsettling, is that every time your brain replays one of these moments, it is not playing back a recording. It is rebuilding the memory from scratch. And it is doing that on purpose. Your brain is not malfunctioning at 3 a.m. It is working exactly as designed. That's the part nobody tells you. At some point in the last few years, a memory came back to you completely unprompted. Not a major trauma, not a life event, something small, something embarrassing, maybe something so minor that if you described it out loud, the other person would say, "That's it." And somehow that would make it worse. You weren't thinking about it. There was no obvious trigger, and then it was just there, fully formed with the feeling attached. The heat in your face. The specific quality of your own silence right after it happened. You've experienced this hundreds of times. You've probably never questioned why. The standard answer, the one that gets repeated, is that your brain holds on to negative experiences more strongly than positive ones. That's called negativity bias, and yes, it's real. But it doesn't explain the 3 a.m. part. It doesn't explain why these memories surface in the specific moments when you're trying to rest. It doesn't explain why some embarrassing memories fade completely while others replay on a loop for decades. The real answer is stranger than that, and it starts with what your brain actually classifies as a threat. Your brain does not distinguish between physical pain and social pain, not metaphorically. Literally, neurologically, the same circuitry processes both. In 2003, psychologist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA ran a study where participants played a simple computer game called Cyberball. They were throwing a virtual ball back and forth with two other players. What they didn't know was that those other players were programmed, and at a certain point, they stopped including the participant entirely. No confrontation, no explanation, just exclusion. The participants' brains responded with activity in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex. That's the same region that lights up when you experience physical pain. Being left out of a computer game by people they'd never met activated the brain's pain system as reliably as a physical injury. Eisenberger's conclusion was direct. Social rejection is not processed as an emotional event. It is processed as a threat to survival. Your brain does not care that the moment was years ago. It does not care that no one was physically harmed. If there was a rupture in your social standing, if you were laughed at, dismissed, caught in a lie, exposed as incompetent, or simply ignored in front of others, your brain logged that as dangerous. And it keeps flagging it. Because in its logic, a threat that hasn't been resolved is a threat that might come back. But here's where it gets disturbing. The replay isn't accidental. Your brain is doing something very specific with these memories while you lie there in the dark. And once you understand what that is, you cannot unknow it. Your brain has a default mode network. It's a set of regions that activate when you're not focused on a task, when you're resting, drifting, or trying to sleep. For decades, neuroscientists assumed this network was idle. Background noise. It is not idle. Research from Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, who spent years mapping the overlap between social cognition and the default mode network, found that this network is primarily dedicated to thinking about other people. Their intentions, their reactions, their perceptions of you. When your brain has nothing else to do, it defaults to running social simulations. So the moment you stop actively engaging with the world, the moment you lie down at night and close your eyes, your brain shifts into a mode specifically designed to process your social relationships. It reviews interactions. It models outcomes. It asks quietly but persistently, is there anything here that still needs to be resolved? And embarrassing memories are, by definition, unresolved. Something went wrong in a social interaction. The threat was registered. The resolution never came. So your brain keeps returning to it, running and rerunning the scenario, looking for the response you never gave, the explanation that would have saved you, the exit you didn't take. It is trying to protect you. It is preparing you for a version of that situation that may never happen again. But the thing nobody tells you about this process, the thing that changes how you think about every memory you've ever tried to escape, is what happens to the memory each time your brain runs the simulation. It doesn't stay the same. It can't. Every time you recall a memory, you make it unstable. This is called reconsolidation, and it is one of the most counterintuitive findings in modern neuroscience. When a memory is retrieved, it briefly returns to a malleable state. The neural connections that hold it together loosen. And when the memory is stored again, which happens within a few hours, it gets stored with whatever emotional context surrounded the retrieval. Neuroscientist Karim Nader at McGill University demonstrated this in a landmark study in 2000. He found that blocking a specific protein in rats during the reconsolidation window, right after a memory was retrieved, erased that memory entirely. The rats forgot experiences that had been strongly encoded, not because the original memory was damaged, but because the restoring process was interrupted. What this means for you is specific and slightly unsettling. That embarrassing memory you've replayed hundreds of times. It is not the original memory anymore. Each time you retrieved it, you altered it slightly. You added context. You added the emotional state you were in at 3 a.m. You may have added the shame of the fact that you're still thinking about it. You have, without knowing it, been editing this memory every time you revisit it, and in many cases, you have made it worse. The original moment, which your nervous system at the time judged to be a 6 out of 10, may now be stored as a 9 because of how many times your anxious, sleep-deprived brain has touched it in the dark. The replay didn't preserve the memory. The replay changed it. You're in a meeting and you say something that doesn't land the way you intended. The room moves on. The meeting ends. You go home. And somewhere around midnight, your default mode network retrieves it, not the actual moment, but the social threat version of it. The version where everyone noticed. The version where your credibility quietly shifted. You replay it, maybe 5 times, and each retrieval makes the memory slightly more charged. By the time you fall asleep, you've stored something noticeably worse than what actually happened, or it's older than that. It's something from a decade ago, a joke you made that no one laughed at, an answer you got wrong in front of a class, a moment when you misjudged a room completely. You haven't thought about it in years. And then in the specific quiet of a night when you're already tired and already depleted, your brain decides now is the time. Because your defenses are lower at night, and your default mode network runs less filtered simulations when you're fatigued. This is also why these memories tend to cluster during specific periods of your life. When you're anxious, when you're going through a transition, when your social standing feels uncertain, your brain increases the frequency of threat reviews. It is scanning its archive for relevant data. It is trying to prepare you. And so the memories that surface at 3 a.m. are rarely random. They are contextually selected. Your brain is pulling files that feel related to whatever it's currently worried about, which means the memory isn't really about the past. It's your brain building a threat model for the present. Here is the reframe. You've probably spent years treating these memories as evidence of something wrong with you, as proof that you made a mistake you shouldn't have made, or that you're the kind of person who keeps making it. The replay felt like punishment, and in a strange way, you may have accepted it as deserved. But your brain is not punishing you. It doesn't have a moral position on your behavior. It is running a protection protocol that was calibrated tens of thousands of years before you were born, back when social exclusion didn't mean a bad night. It meant no food, no shelter, no survival. The stakes of social rejection were once genuinely lethal. Your brain never received the update that says it isn't anymore, so it keeps reviewing. It keeps simulating. It keeps asking what you should have said, what you should have done, what you'd do differently if the moment came again, not because it's broken, because it's trying in the only way it knows how to keep you safe. The tragedy is that the process makes things worse. The reconsolidation research is clear. The more you replay, the more charged the memory becomes. The protection mechanism is also the wound-deepening mechanism. There is no external enemy here. The thing causing you the most distress at 3 a.m. is your brain's own attempt to take care of you. And the only thing that has been shown to interrupt this cycle, not suppress it, not medicate it, but actually change what gets stored, is bringing the memory into a regulated, calm state during retrieval, not avoiding it. Processing it differently. Reconsolidation works in both directions. The same instability that makes a memory worse can, under the right conditions, make it quieter. But even knowing all of this, the neuroscience, the threat model, the social pain circuitry, the editing process running in the dark, there is one question that the research doesn't answer cleanly. Some people replay these memories and feel shame. Others replay the exact same type of memory and feel something closer to resolve. Same brain structure, same default mode network, same reconsolidation process. So what's the actual variable? Drop your answer below, and be honest, because the comments on this one tend to be more revealing than people expect. The memory isn't the problem. What your brain does with the memory That's worth paying attention to.